The holographic display had been lying to me for the past hour. It had to be lying. No enemy fleet advanced that quickly, that precisely, that relentlessly, with that specific energy that said we have already won and we simply haven't told you yet. I stood in the Vextharian war room beneath amber strips of emergency lighting. My 5 emerald eyes cycling through every shade of green that fear produces, which is apparently quite a few. My antennae had been doing something embarrassing, twitching in opposite directions independently, as though each one had developed its own opinion about how terrible our situation was and neither could agree. The hologram pulsed red. Another squadron gone. Evilise stood beside me, close enough that one of her living vines brushed my arm every time she shifted her weight. The tiny pale flowers threaded through her vine hair had closed so completely they looked like small pale fists, and her mismatched eyes, one gold, one deep forest green, were locked on the tactical display with the expression of someone watching a beautiful thing get destroyed very slowly. Her translucent dragonfly wings, usually at a relaxed 45 degrees angle behind her shoulders, had pulled so tight against her back they were nearly invisible. She was holding a data pad in both hands with the grip of someone who needed something solid to hold on to. "That's the 3rd defensive perimeter in under an hour," she said. Her voice was professional. Her vines were not. One of them had wrapped around her own wrist 3 times. I looked at the display. The enemy fleet indicators moved like they had somewhere important to be, which they did. They were moving toward us. "Our main battle line holds for perhaps 3 more hours," I said, "perhaps less, possibly significantly less." I paused. "Definitely significantly less." The data pad in Evilisa's hands let out a soft, offended chirp as her grip tightened past what the casing was designed for. She loosened her fingers immediately, looked at the device with something like an apology, and set it carefully on the tactical table. It slid 2 in and stopped. Neither of us commented. The war room smelled like heated circuits and anxiety. The hologram pulsed red again. I turned to the communication console. Quinn stood there. She was human, late 20s, dark hair pulled back with the precision of someone who made precise decisions under pressure, in a white and silver uniform with communication insignia at the collar. She had been watching the same tactical readouts we had, and the look on her face was the look of someone doing rapid internal mathematics and not liking any of the answers. Her hands were already positioned over the comm controls, not quite touching, hovering in that space of "I know what needs to happen and I'm bracing for it." "We need to contact your military command," I said. My antennae had stopped their independent argument and gone rigid instead, which felt like a different kind of alarming. All 5 of my eyes were glowing now, proper luminescence, the kind that happens when desperation bypasses whatever biological system usually keeps it regulated. "We need intervention. We need anything they can send." Quinn's fingers touched the controls. "I'm opening a direct channel to Commander Sylvan." She hesitated for exactly 1 second. "He handles all critical military decisions personally." Something in how she said it personally made my antennae twitch. I filed it away. "Tell him," I said, and I heard my own voice do something undignified, a crack right through the middle of the sentence, where calm professionalism used to live. "Tell him to send us anything. Weapons, ships, support vessels, anything at all. We are being slaughtered out there." I gestured at the hologram with both arms. Another red indicator flickered. "Anything. Whatever they have, please." Quinn pressed transmit. Somewhere in the vast machinery of human military command, a message arrived. The Human Military Command Center was the kind of room that had been designed to communicate authority through its architecture alone. Cool blue light from banks of monitors, warm accent lights overhead, polished floors that reflected everything back at you slightly distorted, brushed silver consoles arranged with military precision. It was a room that said, "Competent decisions are made here." It said this very loudly. It repeated it in the floor finish and the monitor arrangement and the exact angle of every piece of tactical equipment. Commander Sylvan stood at the center of it with his hands clasped behind his back and the expression of a man who had never once questioned whether he was the smartest person present. His salt and pepper hair was immaculate. His tailored navy uniform with its gold insignia caught the monitor light in a way that seemed almost intentional. He was mid-50s and carried those years like decoration rather than evidence of time passing. Quinn's voice came through the comm, "Commander, priority request from the Vextherian delegation. Their fleet is under heavy attack. They're requesting any military support." "I already understand the situation," Sylvan said. He did not look up from the holographic display he was studying. His hand moved across it with the confidence of someone pointing at things he had definitely understood. "They need military intervention. Something decisive. Something that sends a message. Sir, their main defensive line is collapsing, yes." He straightened up, turned. His sharp features arranged themselves into the expression of a man who had just solved a difficult puzzle in the time it took other people to find a pencil. "They said nothing, didn't they? They said send anything." Quinn's voice was careful. "Those were their words." "Yes, but in context." "Good." He turned to the tactical display and pointed at something with absolute certainty. "Send them the Star Destroyer." The room went very quiet. It was not the comfortable quiet of people absorbing good news. It was the specific quiet of people who had just heard something said out loud that they had hoped would remain a thought. Quinn, at her station, went completely still for 3 full seconds. Her hands remained on the console. Her expression didn't change. The expression not changing was doing a great deal of work. "Commander," she said with the measured tone of someone diffusing something, "the Star Destroyer is our most powerful military vessel. It is flagship-level weaponry. Sending it to a defensive action in an active contested zone without coordination with either faction present is exactly what an overwhelming show of force looks like." Sylvan gestured broadly, one hand sweeping through the holographic display, scattering data points. "They want military might. They want the enemy to stop. A Star Destroyer stops enemies. This is simple." He turned back to the main display with the satisfaction of a completed equation. "Send the order." Quinn's fingers moved over the console. They moved slowly. They moved with the energy of someone who was hoping, with each keystroke, that they would think of a compelling counterargument before reaching the final confirmation. She reached the final confirmation. She pressed it. Somewhere across the solar system, a massive warship received its orders and oriented toward a set of coordinates it had never been pointed at before. Quinn put both hands flat on the console surface and looked at them for a moment. The space station conference area was meant for negotiations, a neutral, elegant, brushed silver table curved in a soft arc, observation windows running the length of one wall showing the deep black of open space. Overhead skylights casting cream-white light down over everything. The kind of room where enemies became cautious acquaintances over the course of several careful conversations. I was standing near one of the windows when they arrived. Ivlis was at the curved table, her vine hair slightly more settled now, 2 or 3 flowers cracking open by small degrees. I had my arms crossed, not aggressively, but in the way that means I am holding myself together through deliberate effort. Sylvan entered first, which I had expected. Behind him came someone I had not expected. Krellborn, the Krelson, walked into the room with the particular composure of someone accustomed to being the most dangerous presence in any given space. He was tall, taller than Sylvan by several inches, with warm ivory cream skin and rose gold scale patterns that caught the skylight and fragmented it gently. His 2 large golden eyes moved across the room with calm precision. His dark brunette hair with its rose gold highlights was impeccably kept. He wore burgundy silk military formalwear with rose gold accents, and his long prehensile tail extended slightly behind him, the ivory cream length of it moving with controlled grace. He was the enemy military commander. My antennae shot straight up. Ivlis's flowers slammed shut, every single one simultaneously in a sound like a small round of applause. I thought it appropriate, Sylvan announced, gesturing between us with great satisfaction, to bring Commander Krellborn here so he could witness the solution to your problem firsthand. Transparency, good for all parties. He moved toward the observation windows. In fact, you should be able to see it arriving shortly. Krellborn had gone very still. His golden eyes were tracking something on the tactical display mounted to the wall, a vessel indicator approaching, the scale reading beside it. His rose-gold scale pattern stopped their gentle iridescent movement. They went static, then shifted to pale ivory, then to something translucent. His tail, which had been moving with controlled grace, stopped completely. What? Krellborn said, which was not a question so much as a sound a person makes when their higher reasoning has stepped briefly outside. Is that? That, Sylvan said, with the satisfaction of a man presenting a birthday gift he was very proud of, is a star destroyer. Most powerful vessel in human military inventory. Your allies asked for anything, I sent the best thing. He looked between us. You're welcome. My 5 eyes had begun to glow so brightly that I was casting green light on the observation window in front of me. Through that window, in the deep black of open space, a point of light was growing. Not brightening, growing. Getting larger, becoming a shape. Krellborn's scales had completed their shift to translucent pale. Through his own skin, faint rose-gold undertones were visible, his biology making his terror literally transparent. His golden eyes were fixed on the approaching shape. His tail had wrapped once around his own leg, which I recognized as a species-specific response to the specific sensation of watching a planet killer arrive unannounced. You sent, he said, with great precision, an assault platform to a contested zone without coordinating with either faction. Both factions are right here, Sylvan said, gesturing at us. Coordinated. Ivlis made a sound I had never heard her make before. It was very small. One of her vines reached out and wrapped around the edge of the curved table, then immediately unwrapped, then wrapped around it again. The shape in the observation window continued to grow. It grew past the point where it was a shape and became instead a presence. It grew past the point where you could see around its edges. The stars behind it disappeared one by one, replaced by the sheer fact of its existence. Weapon systems along its surface began to glow with the soft, terrible light of the systems coming online. Sylvan clasped his hands behind his back and smiled at all of us. Well, he said, problem solved. Krellborn's scales flashed brilliant, involuntary rose gold from one end of his body to the other, the Krellin equivalent, I would later learn, of every alarm in a person's body going off at once. His tail lashed once, hard, and struck the curved silver table with a sound like a bell being hit by something that had not intended to ring it. I pressed both palms flat against the observation window and watched the Star Destroyer fill the entire frame. The Star Destroyer did not fire. This was, objectively, the best thing that had happened in the last 20 minutes. And I was trying to hold on to it as a comfort while simultaneously watching it fill every available centimeter of the observation window, like the universe had decided to replace space with metal. Krell Vaughn had not moved. His scales had cycled through rose gold, pale ivory, translucent, and back to rose gold so many times they had essentially given up maintaining a consistent color and were now doing something in between. A shimmering uncertain iridescence that his biology clearly hadn't evolved to express because it had never anticipated needing to. His tail had unwrapped from his leg and was now extended, rigid, and straight behind him, which I suspected meant something in Krell's body language, but I was not in a position to ask for a translation. Ivelis had sat down. Not gracefully, she had located the nearest chair and lowered herself into it with the specific energy of someone whose legs had quietly submitted a formal resignation. 3 of her vines had wound around the chair's armrests. Her mismatched eyes were fixed on the window with an expression that had moved past fear into something more philosophical, the expression of a person genuinely reconsidering every decision that had led to this moment. Sylvan was still smiling. The enemy fleet should be responding to its presence shortly, he said, gesturing at the tactical wall display with one hand. You'll want to watch that. I turned to look at the tactical display. Then I looked back at the window, then at the display again. The enemy fleet indicators, which had been advancing with the steady confidence of a force that had already calculated its victory, were doing something I had not predicted and could not have predicted because it required understanding a variable I had failed to account for, which was that no military strategist in this sector of space had ever needed to account for the possibility of a single vessel large enough to have its own weather systems arriving without warning or context or any accompanying explanation. The enemy fleet turned around. Not gradually, not tactically, all of them simultaneously, like a school of fish that had encountered something in the water that fish are not supposed to encounter. Their formation, which had been precise, coordinated, the product of months of strategic planning, dissolved completely in approximately 4 seconds and reassembled itself as a collection of individual ships all traveling at maximum speed in the general direction of away. Every red indicator on the tactical display began moving in reverse. I watched this happen. I watched it continue to happen. I watched it keep happening until the display, which had been showing me a picture of imminent catastrophic defeat for the past hour, was showing me something that looked almost like an empty battlefield. Lisa's vines slowly loosened their grip on the chair armrests. "Oh," she said quietly. Sylvan turned from the display with the expression of a man whose expectations have been confirmed at every level. "Decisive," he said. "That's what overwhelming force projection looks like. They ran the numbers and they quit. Simple military logic." He straightened his already straight uniform. "I'll need a full debrief room shortly. This is going to be instructive for a lot of people." Krell Forlag finally moved. He turned from the observation window slowly, his golden eyes shifting from the retreating fleet indicators to Sylvan, then to me, then back to Sylvan. His scales had settled into a deep burgundy, not the fear ivory of earlier, but something more composed, more deliberate. The color of a person who has processed an impossible situation and emerged on the other side with a particular kind of understanding. He said nothing for a long time. His tail moved in a slow, controlled arc. Then he said, "Your strategic methodology is unlike anything I have encountered in my military career." Sylvan accepted this completely. "Experience," he said. The strategic command room had a rose-gold holographic table at its center that projected tactical data in slow, steady pulses. And the overhead amber lighting mixed with the cool blue of the display screens to cast everything in a warm, uncertain glow. The kind of light that made it genuinely difficult to tell if a situation was improving or simply becoming more confusing at a slower rate. Krellborn and I stood on opposite sides of the table. Between us, on every display surface in the room, the enemy fleet continued its retreat at impressive velocity. Tixal stood at a secondary console along the wall, her 3 amethyst eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. Her translucent opalescent skin glowing with soft rose gold from within, the Tixal expression of someone who had been handed a situation requiring enormous amounts of recalibration and was performing that recalibration out loud in light form, whether she intended to or not. A low harmonic hum came from her, almost musical. The kind of sound that suggested she was still deciding what emotion to file this experience under. "They are not retreating from your weapons capabilities," Tixal said carefully. Her 3 eyes moved from the display to Krellborn and then to me. "They are retreating from its implications. A single vessel of this scale represents industrial and military capacity they cannot model. You cannot develop a counter-strategy for something you cannot fit into your existing frameworks for what is possible." "They're confused," I said. And even as I said it, I understood that I was still catching up to the full shape of what had just happened. My antennae were moving slowly now, processing rather than panicking. "Worse than confused," Krellborn said. His tail extended fully behind him that controlled grace, returning deliberate and composed. "They're irrelevant. Their entire strategic doctrine is built on attrition, incremental advance, resource depletion over time." His golden eyes met mine across the table. "You cannot attain something that arrived fully formed and enormous and apparently without cost or limitation. You can only leave." Fixaza's harmonic hum shifted into something with a slight ironic undertone. Her face sparkled once. The human commander sent the worst possible military option for any conventional tactical goal, she said. And it achieved an outcome no conventional tactical option could have achieved. She paused. I am placing this in a category I've had to create specifically for this event. The category does not have a name yet. Krell-born scales flickered briefly with rose gold. It might have been humor. It might have been the specific exhaustion of someone who had run out of other responses. My people will request a formal record of this engagement, he said. They will study it. They will dedicate significant academic resources to understanding the decision-making process that produced this result. My 5 eyes brightened slowly as the full irony of it settled across my consciousness like a blanket that was somehow both warm and deeply absurd. We can tell them everything, I said. Every detail of exactly how it happened. They will not believe us, Krell-born said. He said it with complete certainty, the certainty of someone who knew his own people well. They will assume we have omitted the sophisticated elements. They will spend years looking for sophisticated elements. His tail curved in something I was beginning to recognize as his version of a shrug. They may never stop looking. Quinn found me in the observation chamber 30 minutes later. She came in quietly, the way people enter rooms when they are hoping to process something alongside someone rather than explain it, and stood at the window next to me. We both looked at the Star Destroyer, which continued to occupy the majority of the available view. He's already written the incident report, she said. She said it the way people describe things they have witnessed and cannot undo. What does it say? I asked. Decisive strategic application of overwhelming force. She paused. He used the word visionary in reference to himself. It's in there twice. My antennae rose slightly. He's going to be promoted, she said. She was not happy about this. She was not unhappy about it, either, exactly. She had the expression of someone who had passed through unhappy and come out into a flat, open landscape of pure bewildered acceptance. The board will review the outcome. Enemy fleet retreated, alliance strengthened, 0 casualties, conflict resolved. The outcome is objectively extraordinary. They will promote him. I know, I said. He nearly caused a catastrophic incident, she said. He sent a Star Destroyer to a contested diplomatic zone without coordinating with either faction, without understanding the political situation, without, I know, I said again. Quinn was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, the Star Destroyer held its position with the enormous patience of something that did not experience time the way organic beings did. Its weapon systems had partially stood down, which had helped exactly no one's composure, given that it was doing considerable work in that sentence. Captain Helena has been very professional about the whole thing, Quinn said. She received the order, executed it, arrived, and has been waiting for further instructions with what I can only describe as extremely calm bewilderment. She paused. She cummed me privately about 20 minutes ago. All she said was this the plan? What did you tell her? I told her it was a plan, Quinn said. I did not specify whose. My 5 eyes cycled through their full luminescent range, not in panic, not in desperation, but in something I recognized as the physical equivalent of laughing very quietly at the universe. My antennae moved with slow, settled grace. The final resolution chamber had been arranged with the insignia of both species displayed at equal height on opposite walls, which under the circumstances felt less like diplomatic courtesy and more like the universe's way of acknowledging that things had arrived at an unexpected destination through an unexpected route, and the least everyone could do was be formal about it. Sylvan stood at the center in his immaculate uniform. Krell Vorn and I stood facing each other across the silver table with Avelise beside me. 3 of her flowers are now fully open and trembling slightly on their stems in the air. Her wings had returned to their 45-degree resting position. She had combed most of her vines back into something that looked intentional. I had prepared words, diplomatic words, careful words, words that acknowledged the magnitude of what had shifted without requiring anyone present to fully examine how it had shifted or through what mechanism or as the result of whose specific decision-making. The threat to our people has been eliminated. I said. My antennae were still composed. My 5 eyes glowed with steady green luminescence. Our 2 species can now pursue a course that was impossible before today. We are grateful for the intervention. Krellborn extended his hand, the formal gesture of alliance, the one that crossed species, the one that meant I am choosing this. His golden eyes were calm and his scales held their deep burgundy and his tail extended fully behind him in a line of composed deliberate grace. I reached across the table and completed the gesture. Sylvan smiled, the smile of a man standing at the center of a success he understood completely. Behind him, on the comm panel, Captain Helena's voice came through with professional calm. Star Destroyer holding position. All systems are stable. Standing by for orders. Maintain readiness. Sylvan said, until we have full confirmation. Krellborn's eyes found mine across the table and something passed between us, not words, not quite the specific recognition of 2 people who have survived the same impossible thing and emerged on the other side holding an outcome neither had planned for. His scales shimmered once with rose gold. My antennae moved in an arc that my people would recognize as the equivalent of a deep, exhausted, genuine breath. Somewhere in this sector of space, other civilizations were already transmitting distress signals. Word traveled fast out here and the word traveling fastest was that a human commander had resolved an intractable conflict through methods no one could explain using a vessel no one could counter and the outcome had been extraordinary. They would all want the same thing. They would all ask for Commander Sylvan, and he would send them something. Whatever he sent, he would be confident it was exactly right. I looked down at my hands, pale cream with pearlescent patterns catching the chamber light, and felt them steady against the table's surface. I had come into this day terrified and had arrived at its end in an alliance I hadn't imagined and a peace no one had strategized. The Star Destroyer still filled the observation windows on the far wall. Sylvan was already gesturing at something on a tactical readout with the certainty of a man preparing his next move. My 5 eyes glowed warm and bright and steady. The universe had its sense of humor, and it was not subtle, and I had decided, somewhere in the last several hours, to find that beautiful rather than alarming. It was a decision that required effort. It was also, I suspected, the only one available.